but it's such a great story. Really interesting. I saw that in the movie theater. And as much as in the 1979 episode, I ripped on the original Star Trek, the motion picture, here you have Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, Ricardo Montalban reprising his role from the original series. I mean, that gets to be a deeply personal story with he and Kirk, and a story of revenge, and picking up a story that much later on. Star Trek II. Now that is probably the best Star Trek movie. I haven't seen the reboots, with J.J. Abrams and Chris Pine, and Siler from Heroes. I'm forgetting his name, Zachary something. I haven't seen those, but as my estimation, other than some of the next generation stuff like with the Borg, that Star Trek II, top notch. And Wes Craven is here on the list. Wes Craven of Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream and, a bunch of other things. He's here with Swamp Thing. Talk about a guilty pleasure. I really, really enjoy that. Now, mind you, big comics reader, back in the day. I say back in the day, but it's only about probably 5 years ago that I stopped reading anything. That was Adrian Barbeau, I think, right? Adrian Barbeau, who was also in one of my other favorite movies from the era, Escape from New York. Such a great story. When you really look at Swamp Thing, it comes out pretty kitschy and all those kind of things, and you look back at it and it seems absurd, but the story itself is really interesting. And what is it that makes a person? What is it that makes a man? He's still Alec Holland in this horrific body, but he's also, in tune with the earth and the planet and the swamp. It's kind of a cool story, kind of a cool character. You have Dustin Hoffman on here with Tootsie. That was meant to be a real, a button pusher for the time and really interesting. Particularly because, it has some certain parallels with stuff that's going on today, which just goes to show that Hollywood, even now and back then, has always kind of set certain, I don't want to say expectations or wheels in motion, but you go back to, we'll use Star Trek and the communicators that they used. Those are the early versions of what can be flip phones, or even just going to the local grocery store and having doors that open on their own. So Hollywood kind of sees all this stuff. The World According to Garp, so John Irving. I didn't start reading John Irving until I was in my early 20s. I think I ended up reading all of it. I've never actually gone back and watched this movie. And I think John Lithgow is an amazing actor. I think that Robin Williams is as well, and Glenn Close. And this was Glenn Close's first role. And I didn't realize that. But I've read the book, but I've actually never seen the movie. But I've seen, I think, most of the other adaptations, except for that weird kind of, I don't know. They did something weird with A Prayer for Owen Meany, but I haven't gone to watch it. And then finally, the last movie that I want to bring up. Now, this was not necessarily a top hit, and some of these movies weren't necessarily the top of the box office. But one of my long-term, prepubescent through adolescent through puberty crushes was the female lead in the Scott Baio vehicle, Zapped. Again, this is one of those things that I saw on either an HBO or something like that. I fell in love with Heather Thomas from that moment, and she was on The Fall Guy with Lee Majors. This was a long-term, she was the love of my life when I was a little kid, into my teens. Loved Heather Thomas. Zapped is a silly, stupid movie, but it was a lot of fun, and it was very indicative of the time. So, there you have it. The movies and the music of 1982. Some things that are classic and iconic that are still a part of our culture today, and some things that have gone by the wayside, certainly more so in the music realm. I think a lot of the movies that are on there, for whatever reason, have held up or launched careers of, a lot of actors. You just go back at Fast Times. You look at it, it's like Jennifer Jason Leigh, Phoebe Cates, Sean Penn, Judge Reinhold, Eric Stoltz, Nicolas Cage. I mean, it's kind of amazing when you think about it. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger was at the beginning of his career, really still just becoming the iconic superstar that he became. You got Eastwood in his whole 80s phase, where he's become just this double threat of director and actor extraordinaire. You have horror really becoming a box office draw, I think more so than it ever had before. And of course, you have Stallone continuing to become a worldwide superstar. And even in some cases, you have Harrison Ford, who's coming off of Star Wars. And had the first Indiana Jones come out yet? Was that 80? I forget. But Harrison Ford still building his career to become this legend that he became. And on the music charts, Hall Oates, Toto, Paul McCartney, Journey, Foreigner. I mean, it's classic stuff. Even though for some of the artists, like I mentioned, an Elton John, where it's not their best period, to be honest, but it's still notable and they're still big superstars and still making it on the charts. So I'm hoping to have planned for another guest to be joining me for next week's episode. So please keep an eye out for that. I'm really excited to go ahead and have this guy on because we definitely experienced some really cool stuff, particularly in our high school years, and very different music than what I've already talked about over these past few episodes. I think you really enjoy it. I'm really looking forward to it. So as always, please leave 5-star reviews, subscribe to the show, leave some likes, reach out to me on Instagram and Twitter at StuckPodX. You can also follow me on my Facebook page, Stuck in the Middle, a Gen X podcast. I am thinking of creating a group. This is something that is new to me because I never really dealt with Facebook groups before. But because I have no traction on Twitter, I can't do the polls that I'd mentioned in the very first couple of episodes, where I'm going to put up some topics and have you, the listeners, decide what the next topic will be for the next episode. The only way that I can do that is by having a Facebook group. I thought just having a business page would allow me to do that. In fact, it doesn't. It has to be behind the group. So I'm working on that. I am still seriously considering the possibility of a Patreon. That was something that was born from a conversation that I had earlier this week, that maybe this is something viable that I want to do. And of course, I already mentioned that the YouTube channel will have some content, but you can also listen to the podcast there. So if there's someone who you might know who might be interested, and that's the method that they like to go ahead and consume their content, by all means, send them over to YouTube. So, until next time, I hope you've enjoyed the show. Later, slackers.